Most people are trying to fix their life from the outside in. They try to fix the relationship, the career, the confidence, the lack of direction, the emotional exhaustion, the overthinking, the people pleasing, and the constant feeling that something is missing. But what if those things are not the real problem? What if they are the symptoms of something deeper? Because the way you relate to yourself becomes the way you make decisions, the way you set boundaries, the way you tolerate certain relationships, the way you trust yourself, the way you express yourself, and the way you build your life. So, in this episode, we are opening the first conversation in the Authentic Life Blueprint series why your relationship with yourself is not a side issue, it's the foundation. If you're actively seeking ways to build your mental toughness, navigate life transitions with grace, or simply find inspiration to keep moving forward, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast.
Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking. I am Kat, this is Yvette, and today we are going to talk about the reason why your relationship with yourself is the blueprint for every other area of your life.
And we talk a lot about people often going to personal growth because they're wanting to fix something external.
Yeah.
And usually the best way to fix something externally is to resolve what's happening on the inside and
Yes.
to have a better relationship with who you are on the inside. And I know, like for me, when I first came across personal growth, I was chasing the money. I was going, oh, I want to be successful in life and I want to do this
Yeah.
and I want to do that. And then I found through it, it actually helped me understand me better.
Yeah.
And through understanding me better, I started to see where I was overthinking on things too much and what I needed to do to stop overthinking. It also helped me kind of ascertain what was important to me in life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What
Which
do
you
I really
think,
care about?
which you would
Mhm.
think that, we should all have a handle on at least. But it was quite fascinating how I didn't really have a handle on that. I would have thought, like, if you had asked me, I would have
Yeah.
gone, yeah, of course I know that. But then when you start doing the work, you go, no, I actually really don't know what it is that I really, the
No.
things that really make my heart sing, all those types of stuff. And
Mm.
so it really is about looking internally to really understand you in order to be able to impact and improve those other areas of your life. That's been
Mm.
my experience, at least.
Yeah. And doing it in a way that is a useful technique that gives you results, not one that makes you just sit in rumination or in a judgment. It's actually, you can sit and just ruminate and do circular thinking. And that a lot of people think that is a good way to self-assess, but actually that can be quite harmful. So the best way to do it is in a structured way that allows you to move forward, but also at the same time, listening to your own spirit, listening to your own subconscious thoughts, and giving yourself the opportunity to become the person that you're supposed to be in a safe way that switches off that monkey mind and then helps you move forward in a goal that you want. Because until you kind of, I say this all the time, until you know who you are inside and what works for you and what makes things good for you, you can't really pick anything that you like. It's like me going to the clothing shop and saying, I'm going to go and buy myself a size 8 pair of jeans. And then when I try and squeeze my fat ass into that, it doesn't work because I'm a 6 foot tall woman who has curves, and I'm never going to be a size 8. I've never been a size 8, because I'm not 5 foot tall and skinny. So,
Yeah.
but it's like getting around with that awareness of yourself. So you need to know what clothes fit you, what clothes look good on you. I think this is something all women learn, don't we? We learn this.
Well, you learn the hard way too if if you're not doing it correctly. It's like, oh, I'm always uncomfortable.
Exactly.
I'm always this. I'm always that. And it's like, well, are you
Exactly.
actually really trying to dress for somebody else, or are you actually dressing for you?
Why
Yeah.
are you dressing that way? Is it because that's what the trend is, or that's what someone's told you look good in? I mean, I remember years ago, I went and did a mentoring program when I was working in my business for the local school, and one of the girls there told me she was going to be a childcare worker. I said, oh, great. What's your inspiration for doing that? She said, oh, my mum and my dad told me I should be one. I said, okay, well, let's look at what do you want to do? Do you like kids? And she went, no.
Oh my gosh.
So I said, so what's the point of doing that then? She said, oh, my parents have just said I'd be really good at that. And I said, but what do you think you'd be good at? And she went, don't know. And I could see that there was no capacity there for us to have that conversation yet.
Yeah.
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 But that's why I think it's so important that you do look inward and you do look into yourself, because the world around you is full of noisy feedback. telling you who you are, telling you what you're like, telling you what suits you. You need to know.
Totally. And I just think of you recently did the episode on the law of detachment
Yeah.
and what that means in your everyday life and how to actually recognize whether you're reacting to something and versus responding.
Yep.
And exactly what you've described then is someone reacting to what other people are telling them to do
Yep.
instead of actually going, hold on, what is it that I really want? And how many of us do that? How many of us actually
Yeah.
don't step back, connect within and go, hold on a second, what is it that I want to do? Is this actually true to me?
Yeah.
Is it like, okay, like if I look at that instance, I hate kids. So why would you do that? Because you're going to be around kids all the freaking time. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's
You
just,
hate them
that's just
now. Just wait till
insanity.
you've changed a
Yeah.
few terrible nappies and watch them, belt each other over the head with a truck. Then you'll really.
Exactly. It's insanity disguised as strategy. Do you know what I mean? You just sit there going, that's not a good decision. And that's what happens when you are disconnected from yourself. You're too easily influenced
Yeah.
from other people or your external environment. And then you've got the other thing, as we said, of where you're trying to do things for the external environment.
Yeah.
Rather than going, hold on, what is it that I want to do here?
Yeah.
And I think when you are able to take that step back and really look at yourself and understand who you are, gain that, go internal for the direction in life, for any questions that you're looking to answer, and to really get to understand yourself better, then you're able to make really clear choices in your life, and especially the ones that are around what you perceive to be your purpose, or what you want to be doing as a job in your life, because you're going to be spending so much time in that space
Yeah. Where
that
you
you want to
show
be
up.
making sure. Exactly. I mean, if I go back to our conversation that we were having just before we started this recording, and we were talking about entering the workforce, and it's really important to go, well, okay, does the job that I'm being put forward for align with my values? Does that organization actually align with my values?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, don't go for it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. So many of us go, oh, but I really need the job, or I don't have that luxury, or I should just be grateful that I have that occupation. And
Yeah.
if you're going to use it as a stepping stone, absolutely. But if you're looking at it for the sake of I just need a job, well, then you're not going to be happy in it. You're absolutely not going to be happy in it.
And sometimes what some of us do, and this is a conversation I've had with my husband as well, we get really good at something we enjoy, and then we get into an organization that doesn't align with our values, that does that work. And then they give us things like golden handcuffs to stay. And then, that can be really detrimental as well, because I think I gave you one example, which was an extreme, that a girl didn't have a clue what she wanted to do, really. She was just following advice from her parents. But I mean, we're older people. You can be seasoned professionals who are working in jobs that don't give you that satisfaction. You may enjoy the work you do, but it might be, 2 mil to the left that you need to go with where you're going to go with the workplace. It might be the wrong workplace. It might be the wrong cultural fit. It might be the wrong position. And I think the older you get, the more you get to know yourself and the more you realize that isn't going to work for you. So, but I see a lot of people just continuing to go, oh, I've got nothing else. I've just got to flog myself to fit. And often organizations change as well. Like you can be with an organization that you love, that is a great fit for you, and then you can get a terrible manager come in.
Yeah.
Then you
Absolutely.
got to ask
I mean,
the question.
I had that experience on several occasions. I've had that experience, and that's the thing. When you are following that path, what ends up happening, and I know again, I've experienced that throughout my life, is I start to feel really disconnected from myself.
Yeah,
and especially in the early days before I actually got introduced to metaphysics and personal growth work, I did feel a real disconnection from myself. And if I go back to when I went through cancer, I would say that was the heightened period of where I felt most disconnected.
Yeah, right.
So not surprising that cancer came into my life. And then it was through that was the wake up call for me.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started to, look at that relationship that I had with myself. At first, I did not realize that that's what I was doing. I was just looking for anything that was going to bring me happiness within my heart. That's what I was looking for. It just turned out to be that happiness comes from having a really good relationship with self and understanding who you are. So the thing to look at it is these are all real issues. You know, the whole thing around people pleasing, around making not informed decisions because we're making them reactively,
Yep.
feeling that disconnection from ourselves, not being in the best relationships or friendships that we could have,
Yes.
stopping that overthinking, as you said, that whole spiral of the ruminating of being in that space all the time and overthinking, and that doesn't do anything for you. It just gives you a really
Mm.
stressed nervous system.
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and you know, and all of these are absolutely real issues, and we're not trying to take that away from people.
Mm-mm. No,
What
no.
we're actually trying to say is that if you want to resolve those things in your life, the best way to do that is to reconnect with who you really are, to
Yeah.
really understand you at the core, to really
Mhm.
be able to listen to yourself and trust yourself, and then honor what it is that you want to project in your life, what you want to portray, what you feel that you are here to express, and honor that,
Yeah.
and then start living life from that place.
And as you
And
make
that's
those changes, things around you will change. Your relationships will change. There will be some
yeah,
people in your life. I've just had a huge personal breakthrough with the work I've been doing around my female relationships and why some of the female relationships I've had mirror the dysfunctional relationship I had with my mother as a
and
child.
that's big. Oh my God, that's big.
You know,
Yeah.
I was always the safe person. I was always the rock holding it together. I'm always the one you can come to with all of your drama and your problem, and I'll go, okay, it's going to be okay. Think of it like this, and I'll be the one that helps you get back on your feet because I had to do that as a child for my mother because that was the only way I stayed safe.
Yeah.
Now, knowing that has made me go, actually, I don't want those relationships anymore. I don't want them. Now that I know that, and that was a hard truth to accept and learn about myself. So when you, and that's the point that we're making, I suppose, is it's not all just fluffy wuffy. It's actually really getting down to brass tacks. And then you have these realizations, an arrow to the brain, and you go, okay, well, now I recognize that in myself. How am I going to avoid having future relationships like that? And do I want to keep the relationships I'm currently enmeshed in that are not helping? They're not giving me anything. I'm just giving. Yeah.
And And if I look at that, you know, because you just mentioned about that self relationship isn't the whole lovey dovey type of stuff. It's not about, you
Yeah.
know, the whole, oh, it's just self love or it's just self care. It's not about that. It's more than that. It's
Yeah.
exactly what you did in that instance, which is actually taking an honest step back and really listening to yourself and going and having a hard conversation with yourself as well to
Yeah.
sort of say, well, why do these relationships keep popping up in my life?
Yeah.
What role am I actually playing in this relationship? And
Yep.
what have I been getting out of it?
What's my payoff? What's my
Yeah.
payoff? And why do I feel so insecure that I need to keep having those relationships? You know,
Ah, there we go.
I'm good enough actually just to be a friend. I'm a bloody good friend. I don't need to be your counselor or your guide. If you want to be friends with me, I'm good fun. We'll just do that.
So, but the thing is you took the courage to go within and ask yourself those questions and to really listen to it,
Mm,
and then to actually do some deeper work on it and go, "Ooh, okay, well, where has this come from? Why do I keep finding myself in these
yeah.
types of relationships?" And then having, as I said, that honest conversation with yourself and the going within
Yeah.
to get those answers, you know?
And I'm
So,
not proud. I'm not proud of how that stuff triggers me either. Like I
yeah.
know, and that's the other thing, when you do this work, you get to know yourself internally, you can hear your own thoughts, but you can also feel your nervous system a lot better. So you can have conversations with people that make you go, no. And you just know your body's going, no, no more. I don't want any more of this. Or it makes you really angry. I got really angry with a friend the other day. They're doing something terribly self destructive yet again. And then I realized I'm over it. Don't want to deal with it anymore. And I'm not that person that's going to stick around and help people change forever. I used to feel very that I owed them something. There
Yeah.
was some underlying guilt that I should stick around and help people because they're struggling. They're struggling. No, not after 15 years.
Well, and see, what I like about that is that you honored your needs in that place. You also looked at your values and went, no, that doesn't align with my values anymore. That's
Yeah.
and you were very clear on your boundaries as well.
And
And
it
you
was
can
hard.
only
Mm.
And you can only do that when when you understand you and have a really good relationship with yourself, and
Yeah.
you understand what your values are and what your
Yeah.
boundaries are and what your
That's
needs
where it
are,
comes
you
from.
know?
That's where it comes from. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that gives you the strength and the confidence to do these things. And, this is what you were saying. You go into workplace. This is why people start personal growth journeys, because they understand that if they learn better ways of communicating, they'll probably get a pay rise, they'll probably get better jobs, they'll
Yeah.
probably get a nicer house, they'll probably get more money. Yes. However, what you don't understand is that if you keep it focused on yourself, on the outside, and those reactions all the time, and you don't do the work to level up inside, you might earn all that money, because I've done it, and then you
Yeah.
lose it. And you
Yeah.
lose it. I've had the relationship and the marriage that looked amazing on the outside, and our beautiful mansion and all the things, but I hadn't done the self work to level up and realize who I was. So all of it was very surface, and it all came crashing down at some point, which is pretty standard. And now I think it was Tony Robbins one day, I heard him say, all the external stuff is just trophies. It's just a
Mm.
reflection of what's going on in here. So if you level up in here, all the external stuff will just take care of itself.
Yeah, it'll start to level up, but and
Yeah.
it'll stay. That's the thing. It'll
Yes,
stay for all the
permanently.
right reasons. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Because really your choices end up reflecting your truth and your conditioning, and that's what ends up happening externally. So how you are in here is what will be reflected on the
Yeah,
outside. And as you said,
definitely.
you can definitely achieve temporary success
Oh,
for
yeah.
something will happen, and or you may be really good in one area of your life but not in the other areas of your life,
Yeah.
and so it's really about when you do have that good relationship with self and understand self, all those areas of your life start to blossom, not just one.
It is about shifting your identity, but you can't
Mm.
shift your identity until you figure out what direction you're meant to go in, and that comes from, yeah, the work of understanding you. So how do you
Yeah.
do it? That's the question. How do you do it?
Well, how do
Or
you do it? Well, before I go into that, what I'd like to say to our audience is, what's the type of relationship you have with yourself when no one else is looking? When you are just living your everyday life, you're in your house, you're cooking dinner, or you're getting ready, or you're just sitting on the couch, or you're about to go to bed. What's that relationship you have with yourself? What's that self-talk like?
mm,
What are the things that are going on?
yeah.
Are you belittling yourself? Are you giving yourself a hard time? Or are you being really insecure around the fact of, well, I don't think this person likes me? All that type of thing.
Mm, mm,
Who are you being when no one else is looking? Because that's who you currently are,
yep.
and that's what your life is going to be projecting. And how do
That's
you
my
move
pity.
past that? Well, that's where you connect directly to the authentic life blueprint. The blueprint is our foundational structure, and the reason why it is the foundational structure is it determines what actually gets built on that foundational level.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
if someone's inner blueprint is built, say, on fear or unworthiness, performance guilt, any of those types of
Mhm.
things, or even just old conditioning, they'll actually unravel that throughout the actual blueprint program.
Yep.
They'll be able to get a clear understanding of those patterns.
Mhm.
They may be going through life where they're going, okay, yeah, I'm functioning really, really well. Everything seems great, but again, still feeling disconnected on the inside. So
Yep.
again, there's elements within the blueprint to help you unpack that
Yep.
and really get to know what your values are and what your strengths are, etc. I'm just going to add to that and say that the blueprint, like we all have blueprints, every single one of us, we all
Yeah.
have blueprints
Yep.
of our lives. And sometimes the blueprint that we're running on is an old blueprint, or it's a made up blueprint. And the whole thing with the authentic life blueprint, it's your authentic blueprint. It's going back within yourself to really understand who you are at the core. So then you can start mapping out your
Yeah.
life based on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I know when I did
And
it, I was like,
yeah,
what the questions that are asked of me, I know the confidence building section really got me, because people say that I'm very confident. People have told me that my whole life. I'm a 6 foot tall woman, right? So I learned early on that I'm going to stand out, can't really hide. So I may as well try and do the best I can with that. What I learned during the blueprint was that actually a lot of confidence I had was external facing confidence. It wasn't real. And then it put me through that process of really questioning it and looking at it and thinking, well, how does this work? And that was such a huge step forward, I think, because like you're saying, you can build relationships and beautiful homes, and you can look like you're having a fantastic life and a great career from a wounded blueprint that isn't functional, but eventually that structure will start to show the strain.
Absolutely, it does.
Mm.
And when it does start to show the strain, it starts affecting every area of your life.
Yeah.
Initially, it may just be affecting one component because
Yep.
you've got 5 pillars of life,
Yep.
and it may just be affecting one of those pillars, or it may be affecting all of it. And it could be that you have relationships that feel really unbalanced. It could be that, your work may feel really successful but hollow.
Yep.
I know that's how I felt with myself in my career. I had a very
Mm.
successful career, earning very good money, but I just felt totally disconnected because it was not making my heart sing.
No.
There were elements of it that I really enjoyed, but
Mm.
overall, it was just I just felt like it was dragging me down,
Yeah.
and that I was only doing it to basically exist in life and to keep paying the bills and to keep showing up every day for
Yeah.
something that I did not enjoy.
'Cause you already
And
made the
and I'm
commitments, the mortgage and all the things,
Yeah,
like, yep. Mhm.
exactly. And that was only happening because I was too scared to take a step forward to follow my calling. Yeah. And
Yep.
and it wasn't until I got really, really fed up with that I kind of went, okay, you've got to do something here because you're actually miserable.
Yeah.
What I would say to people is don't wait till you feel miserable to do it. Start just start to really understand who you are and start to um, really unpack who you are at the core and what you're here to do. It'll
Yeah.
help you understand the boundaries that you need to set in your life. It'll make your purpose become very, very clear. Your
Mm.
confidence will also rise because as you start to understand you better, you start to have very different conversations with people. Yeah.
You do. I think it also, it brings you back into yourself physically. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Like, your focus, I think my focus certainly was external a lot of the time, assessing, trying to figure out what other people were thinking or feeling, and in conversations and when things weren't going right at work and stuff. And what I'm now doing instead, I'm using my own feelings and my own how I feel in my body and how this conversation feels to me as my yardstick. And I'm going to guide myself and set my boundaries in the conversations that I have around that. So if something's feeling weird or someone's behaving weirdly, I'm going to respectfully name that up and say something
right.
like, hmm,
Yeah.
is that how you, that kind of, maybe that landed differently than you were expecting it to? I'm not quite clear on that. Can you clear that up for me? Those kinds of things. And I would not previously have done that because I wouldn't have been grounded enough in my body to know. I could know that something was wrong, but I wasn't sure how to fix it up. So for me, it's taken away a whole bunch of stupid looped thinking and
Yeah.
fears and worries. And instead, I'm just going to go with the compass that I have, which is my body and my thoughts, which are now integrated. And then I'm going to navigate using that because I am my own true north and I don't need other people to tell me anymore.
And that's the foundation of the whole Authentic Life Blueprint series. We base it on what we refer to as the self-relationship method.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you've just described is you go out of that reactive to responding and responding based on
Yep.
your core needs and values and requirements in life. So every blueprint that we've created in our whole series sits underneath this method called the self-relationship method.
Yep.
And because the work is it's actually not about fixing people. It's
No.
actually about guiding people to understand the relationship they currently have with themselves, where that relationship has actually been shaped by fear or conditioning, any of those things, old beliefs,
Yep.
self-abandonment, all those types of things, and then restoring it to what their truth is
Yeah.
with some clarity behind it and that self-trust and having aligned action coming from it. So that's the whole premise of it. So the Authentic Life Blueprint is the first entry point into that type of work. And it's a
Mm.
structured way of really starting to see yourself more honestly
Yeah.
and understanding the beliefs and patterns that are actually shaping your life as well. Because sometimes we can be reacting in certain ways and these patterns are coming up, but we're clueless as to even why, because we're too busy reacting rather than taking that step back and going, oh, hold on, I have a choice here.
Yeah.
I don't have to react. I can
Yeah.
respond. So you get to reconnect with your values and your purpose and taking practical steps toward a life that actually feels more authentic for you. And that's really, when you say, what is it that people do? That's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm going to have the confidence to step into doing the thing for me. And, if you're behaving the way that works for you, mostly respectfully, sometimes I crack it too. I'm still at that stage where sometimes I go, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. So, working on that, but we're all a work in progress. If you're doing that and you're working from that place of true authenticity, you'll get a lot of no's, and you'll find that you'll be in situations where you'll go, oh no, this doesn't work for me. I'm not actually interested in this person. This job, I don't think I like the vibe. No, 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 no. And you'll start doing a lot of no's. And initially I had a fear around that, because I think, oh God, well, if I keep turning stuff down, no one's going to want to employ me, and no one's going to um, want to date me or whatever. So, but ultimately what that leads to is the happy life, because you're going to start only choosing to say yes to the things that actually resonate with you, that you actually want to do. You're going to say yes to the jobs that you want. And then, weirdly, and this is the funny paradox, the things that you actually are supposed to have will come to you, because this is how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because when you go back to, when you're talking about that, doing what other people want you to do, like that people pleasing or
Yeah.
that self-abandonment, that self-abandonment can actually sound very, very dramatic, right? But
Yeah,
often, and it comes out in daily life very subtly. It's
it
it's not
does.
something that jumps out. I mean, I
Yeah.
know we've had conversations about that recently when you were sort of saying, "Yeah, I'm finding I'm actually dropping everything for everybody else again," and you're recognizing the pattern. If you
Yep.
didn't actually have that realization or recognition of your pattern from doing the work, you wouldn't
Yes.
even pick up on it. You just fall straight into the pattern.
Just do
But
it.
as soon as,
Yeah.
yeah, but as soon as you are able to see the pattern, you go, I know what I'm doing. And then you can actually, and through self awareness, you can then
Mm.
actually take the steps that you need to do to pivot, in that
Go back to
instant.
yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of deep breathing. I mean, I'm doing it again. Okay. I'm making crappy food that I know that Joe will like because he's home. Although I shouldn't say that. He said to me, God, you say a lot of stuff about me on that bloody podcast. He said, I'm going to write a letter of complaint. He said, I'm quite happy with eating healthy food. No. So, I, so yeah, but it's funny because, again, it's like you're saying, it's a pattern, and the other thing that we're talking about here is self-growth as a journey. The reason that you do the blueprint is that you start to see things and you start to understand that about yourself, so that over time you can change your response. Now, I still have reactions to things that I probably
Mm,
shouldn't. I
mm,
still overreact. I still get annoyed. I'm a bit of a cranky pants sometimes, and I'm a bit of a blunt, straight shooter. Again, it's all a learning curve, and it's something that I'm learning over time, because I'm committed to the journey, I suppose. But that's what I love
yeah.
about the blueprint and the work, because when you recognize it, like you say, you can go, okay, 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 take a few deep breaths. Let's step back into our body. Let's just take a moment and think to ourselves, all right, could have handled that better. Probably said things I shouldn't have said. But the real question is, why did you feel so passionate about it? What is it about that situation that upset you so much? Maybe you need to learn to let this go. Is this good for you?
Mm.
These kinds of
And I
questions.
mean, when we're talking about the self-abandonment side of things as well, it's like, well, why do you feel the need to self-abandon? Why do you put
Yeah.
other people ahead of you?
Yeah.
Saying yes, as you said, when your body's actually saying no to you, not
Yeah.
to do that.
Yep.
I mean, I know that I've done that in the past, absolutely. And it's something that I have learnt over the years to actually listen and trust more, is that when my body says no, it
Yeah.
means no, follow
It
through
means
with it.
no. That's
Yeah,
right.
because I
Yeah.
know that if I don't follow through with that, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to feel this constant inner turmoil. And I was born with irritable bowel syndrome. So the first thing that gets triggered will be my
Yeah.
IBS.
Yeah.
And then I'll
Yeah.
start having stomach cramps and I'll start feeling like I'm going to throw up all the time. And they're
Hmm.
all just signs of my body saying, hey, you're in a position that you don't really want to be in. So get yourself out of it. Yeah.
Oh, look,
So yeah.
absolutely. The stress. I know that when I was in community corrections down here in Tasmania, I was so unhappy in that office and I felt so unsafe with the way they did things, which was totally opposite to what I'd been trained to do, that the last sort of 6 months of it, I had constant back pain, neck pain. I just felt like my body was in like the brace position the whole time. And I was
Mm.
doing massive amounts of work there and smashing things out. And then I'd come home, I was renovating my house, living in the middle of a renovation. The girls were younger, they were needing a lot more support. One of them wasn't very happy living here. It was just non-stop. And I, honest to God, felt like I didn't have a single moment. I totally self-abandoned through that period. And the script I ran in my head was the one that I've inherited from my mother, which was, I have to do it because if I don't do it, no one else will.
Ah, yeah, yeah. And that's that, also staying quiet when something matters, like choosing not to talk or speak up when you are in a situation that doesn't feel so great. I mean, I know I'm guilty of that. I've definitely
Yeah.
um, done the whole life. I don't want to stir the pot, so I'll just be quiet
Or there's no
rather
point.
than speaking my truth. Yeah, or there's no point,
In a
or people
workplace,
aren't. Yeah, they're
nothing's
not
gonna
going to
change.
listen to me.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
nothing's gonna change. So then you
So
need to
I
get
hear
out.
you. It's
Mm,
yeah, it's quite interesting. Self-abandonment is, as I said, it's one of those things that's quite subtle. And unless you've actually got that self-awareness
yeah,
because you've done the work, it's
yeah.
gonna be playing out in your life in areas that you probably aren't even, well, aware of.
And it builds
So,
over time. Like, there's a thing in medicine called referred pain, isn't there?
uh-huh. Hmm.
And what we tend to do is with self-abandonment and with all these patterns that we're in, we tend to look at our outside world as the place that's, I guess, as the place where everything is important. And the outside world is, I suppose, the symptom. When the outside world is not working, those are symptoms. Now, I'll give you an example. Just recently, I've been doing a bit of gaming and I've been getting really stiff in my neck and up into my scalp. Anyway, I did some reading on it and I was like, oh, I need to massage my scalp. I need to massage my neck. No, what I need to do is actually stretch my entire body, move my spine, get my rib cage going, because all of this is referred through from my hips and from my
Ah.
tight body. So I've been doing a lot of weights and walking a lot and not enough mobility and not enough stretching. The
Mm.
moment that I'd been putting hot packs and doing all the things, the moment that I started doing the mobility moves and stretches, bang, it was like a 20% reduction. And I'm doing it every day now. And it's such a difference. I just feel better. Not perfect, but better. So this is what we do. We lose the connection with ourselves. We stop having trust in ourselves and we stop reading ourselves is the full diagnostic tool, and we stop using that. And what we start
Yep.
doing is looking out at the symptoms, the opinions of others, and asking other people to tell us what's going wrong, or speaking to your best friend and saying, what should I do differently? Or talking to your manager, what should I do differently? These people having total agendas around a whole
Yeah.
different load of things that you don't even know about.
Exactly. And you end up staying in roles that you don't want to be in, having habits that really aren't conducive to you, being in relationships that really no longer feel true. And you just keep dismissing your own needs
Yep.
just for convenience.
Mm.
And really, that's what it's about. So every time we abandon ourselves, we actually weaken the trust we have within ourselves.
Yes.
And we also lose our confidence as well. We're
You
not
do
as
lose your
confident.
confidence. You do. You become, and then you become very quite nervous and anxious, and then you start second guessing yourself and everything that you do. And sometimes when you're going through this process of change, you do start to see things falling away and things being a bit
Yeah.
confusing and things not working out the way you want. And it is because I was reading the other day, to start a new life, the old life has to die a bit of a death.
It does. And I think that's that conditioning, isn't it? It's all about that where do we start to lose connection with ourselves is usually through conditioning. And that
Yep.
conditioning can come from anything, childhood conditioning, for
Yeah.
instance, family expectations, all
Yep.
different types of stuff.
Mm.
So sometimes it's not even something that we are doing ourselves, but it's something that, well, we are doing it ourselves. We're playing it out, as you said, in the real world, but
Yep.
it's coming from our past conditioning.
Mm.
Like when you were talking about before, one of the things that you were doing with your self abandonment was actually coming from the patterns that you picked up from your mother.
Yep.
which aren't even your patterns, but they've
They're not even
become
my
your
patterns.
patterns. Yeah, they've
I spent
become
my
your patterns.
lifetime, my childhood watching her, and you don't even absorb these things consciously. You do this by osmosis.
Yeah,
And so sometimes it's the work of going, "Oh, where did I get this from? Oh, okay, I spent my childhood watching my mother please men."
yeah,
She set herself aside and would wait around. I'd go, "What are we doing? We're waiting. For what? For the man."
yeah,
Now
yeah.
that's powerful conditioning because you watch it and then you're taught to do it. And it's not even conscious conditioning, it's unconscious conditioning. So now I'm learning to, and I've learned a great deal. I'm a big distance from where I was, but I'm still not 100% where I need to be. And I don't do it in a way that I used to be I want to be a captain of industry. I want to make tons of money and I'm just going to have all of these amazing things. And it's going to be so, this driving, crazy, old fashioned 90s with shoulder pads ambition. Yeah. I haven't got any of that now. It's
And
exhausting.
that's because you were trying to prove yourself, yeah? So again, that's still a form of losing that connection with self because you're trying to actually prove
Yep.
to the world
Yep.
rather than just prove to you who you are. And was that again coming from family expectations? It may have been because your father was a fairly successful
Oh
person.
my God. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and I know that you were probably going, well, if I want his acceptance, I need to be successful.
Dad
So,
used to have a business down in London and he would stay in a flat above his showroom like 5 nights a week and then come home on the weekends. And this is how it looked. He would stress out Sunday night, race back to London late to avoid the traffic because traffic's horrendous, spend his week miserable as shit in his pokey little flat, flogging himself and like with his suits just selling and doing really well for himself, eating junk food every night, curling up in his crappy little cot, being miserable and wishing to go home all weekend, relax for a couple of days, and then back at it again. And it just by the time he was in his sort of 60s, he was having heart attacks because he was so stressed out and so overweight and so unfit, and was doing really long days because it was all about chasing the money, and that was it. That was all that
mm.
mattered. So the only, I suppose, measurement of success was financial success.
So looking for that society approval, like, look at me, I'm successful because I've got the money, I've got the
The
house,
money.
I've got the car, I've
Yeah,
got this,
yeah.
I've got that. Similar to what you were talking about even in your own experience. I've been there too.
Mm.
We had the cars, the house, the money, the this, the that, and we were masking, look how successful we are. And
But what we see,
the ego gets the look at
look at
me.
me,
And
and
it's
everyone's like, "Oh,
yeah.
look at your nice house. Geez, you've got nice things." For me, it wasn't really about that, actually. It was, I do like to have nice things, and there's nothing wrong with having nice
No.
things. But for me, it was about stability and security because I was under the impression, and it was a wrong impression, that if you've got lots of money and you've got lots of nice things and you live in your castle, that buffers you against the world. And it does give you a nice place to live. But the truth of the matter is, you can lose all of that at any time. So if you are not together and haven't got the foundations right and you haven't got the inner confidence and you've still got the childhood issues going on and you've lost that connection with yourselves, when you lose all that stuff, you are going to be very devastated and it's going to be very hard for you to rebuild because you're just going to have to suddenly start going, holy shit, this is actually really awful. And the older you get, the more difficult, the more tiring it is to do this stuff, I
Mm.
find. So if you can do the self connection, if you can get back to yourself, if you can be your authentic person early on, I think, I wished I'd learned this younger, things will grow organically from that as they're supposed to. You will move into the places that you're meant to go because you'll just naturally guide yourself. And the stability and the security comes from inside here. And no one and nothing can take that away from you.
That's so true. So true. I mean, I know for me, when I look at whenever I lost that self connection with myself or just lost connection in general with myself. And if I look at my childhood and even as a teenager and going into my early 20s, I honestly looked at love from the perspective that if I wanted love, I needed to suppress
Yeah.
self. I needed to not express myself.
Yep.
I needed to not look smart.
Oh,
I needed to play small, all
yes.
of these types of things. And all I really wanted was to be loved because I
Yeah.
didn't really get that as a child. So I was
Yep.
looking for that. as an early adult and falling into the wrong types of relationships. I mean, if I look at my first serious relationship, it was with a man who couldn't even tell me that he didn't believe in love. So
Interesting that, isn't it?
yeah. And here I was going, but that's the thing that I really want is love and I want acceptance. And he just did not believe in love for whatever
Mm.
wacky reason that he had. And I ended up being 2.5 years in this relationship, living with him and just going, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yep.
Because I started to go, I can see this relationship going the same way that my parents' relationship was, and just went, no,
Yep.
I made a decision a long time ago that that's not what I wanted in my life.
Mm.
But I still found myself in a place where I had lost total connection with self and
Yeah,
was looking
absolutely.
externally
Looking for the
for
love.
approval
Yeah.
and the love
Yep.
rather than going within
Yep.
to really love who I am at the core. And then through that, I would start to attract the right person into my life, which eventually I
Yep.
ended up doing. Yeah.
Mm.
But at some
Yep.
point, I don't know, I think we just learn to accept what feels safe rather than really being authentic. And
We
yeah,
perform to keep stability and security. We perform it. And it's really interesting as well. I've always encouraged my girls to get degrees, not because I think that degrees are the be all and end all. I read some really cool data when I was studying psych, and it was saying that women with degrees are far less likely to marry into relationships quickly with inappropriate partners, and they're less
mm,
likely to end up as single mums, sort of stuck with everything, because it's not. And I don't, and like they sort of they drew the correlation between education and having good income, but I don't think that's just all it is, because we invest a lot of money into ourselves. And when you go into degrees, you learn a lot about yourself through the education process, the challenges that you have and the different subjects you like. And I think to some extent that gives you some personal growth alongside the actual study that you're doing, which is great, but it's not everything that you need. You know, we really look at higher education. We think that's fantastic. It gives you a certain amount of growth because it teaches you a little bit. Well, what subjects do I like? What do I want to study? You do think about those things. How do I want my life to look? But it doesn't go deep enough into really becoming stable and understanding yourself. Or you can just treat
mm.
it as an academic exercise where you don't have any of those decisions or thoughts around it as well. But yeah, that's sort of part of the reason I wanted them, because it's a journey. It's a journey that you go on. And any mental or emotional journey that you go on to learn is something that's always going to empower you and make you feel better about your life.
Well, it builds the confidence muscle, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And
You know,
confidence
that's
is a
what that
muscle.
does. It is.
Actually,
It
self
absolutely
growth is a
builds that
muscle.
confidence muscle. And so you
Mm.
will end up building confidence in that particular area. You know that subject well. You know that you've done the pressures of a degree, all those types of
Yeah.
things. Does that
Yep.
mean that has set you up for the pressures of life? Not necessarily. It just means in that space you've done really well at it, but it has built
Yep.
the confidence muscle. And so I think when people are more educated, there may be that little bit more of self-awareness, but then I have also met extremely
Oh,
educated people
same.
who have no common
Self
sense
awareness of a
at all.
bloody broom.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
exactly. It's like, huh? Okay.
There's a danger of stepping into the arrogance of data. There's a real
Yeah.
danger around that. And I've seen that a lot in community spaces. I've seen people with master's degrees in social work or whatever, and they literally will just sit there and go, oh, well, there's no hope for this child. None. I'm like, what? Oh, well, look at the family, look at the parents. They don't engage in any kind of assistance or education or trying to lift or teach or help. It's just, it's foregone conclusion. Data says so.
Yeah, and data can be changed. Yeah, and I think that's the thing as society as well, where we too easily put people in boxes and
Yep.
label people. And if I look at authenticity, for instance, authenticity is not about labeling anything. It's about being true to who you are at the core.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you're being rebellious, and it doesn't mean you're,
No.
basically constantly expressing every single thought or feeling that you're having. It
No,
actually
no, no.
means that you are extremely self-aware. You understand yourself very well. Through that understanding of self, you are able to make really good choices and be honest with yourself,
Yep.
but also be honest when something's going wrong and go,
Mm.
okay, what do I need to do differently here? You start
Yeah.
to, we've mentioned boundaries a few times. you really start to get clear on what your boundaries are. And the reason why
Mm.
you get clear on what your boundaries are is because you understand your values and you understand your strengths and you understand what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not willing to tolerate. I know if I look back again from my childhood and, reflecting on my mother and what I learned from my mum, I learned from my mum to tolerate a lot of shit from
Same.
people, like especially her husband, my father.
Yep.
She tolerated a lot from that man, and
Yep.
us kids also did. However, she probably tolerated more. Well, she definitely tolerated more than she should have. And
Oh
that
God.
tolerance, that high tolerance, I've actually taken on as well. Like I will, not so much these days, but in the past, I would actually tolerate really bad behavior in the workplace of people treating me a certain way
Yeah.
because I just went, I'm here to be paid, so I've just got to
I'll
put
just
up with
ignore
it.
it. Yep.
And then I had this realization one day where I just kind of went, okay, Yvette, would you put up with this in your personal life? Because I'd already was very clear in my personal life that I would not tolerate that
Yeah.
type of
Yep. Yep.
behavior.
Yep.
And I was like, no, I would not tolerate that in my personal life. And then I thought, well, why are you tolerating it in your job?
Yep.
Just because these people are paying you does not mean they have the right to bully you and to traumatize you, because that's what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So I
Exactly. And that's
became,
exactly what it is. Trying to cut you down, belittle you, that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
correct. So I got very clear then, and then went, okay, I need to set some boundaries around this. And I started setting boundaries of what I was and was not willing to put up with. And it was funny, as soon as I started setting the boundaries in that particular space, I got walked. It was like, sorry, we don't want you here anymore. It's like, yeah, because I'm
You're
not willing to put up with your
you're
shit.
too
And I
difficult.
ended up
Yeah.
landing a different role that was way, way better anyway. Um, and that was really about me having a very emotional, honest conversation with myself as
Yeah.
to why am I tolerating this?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so
And I can
unhappy.
tolerate so much in that
That's
space as well because of my
human cost.
upbringing. And I was just like,
Yeah.
whoa, what am I doing here?
Yep.
So my own self-respect kicked in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
again, I look at that and I go, that's that authenticity coming in as well, being
Yep.
really authentic with myself and going, oh, okay, what do you want to have
And
happened here?
it's protecting you. It's you
Yeah.
protecting you and having standards and going, I'm not going to tolerate this. I've done a similar thing. I've put up with terrible shit in workplaces here because I felt like there was no other option. And I thought, oh, well, I don't actually give a shit what they think. I'm just going to do my thing and whatever. And you can be an asshole to me and I'll just ignore it. Like I'll remember what you're doing. I'll never trust you, but I won't say a word. But it can become very detrimental to your career if you actually have to deal with that stuff pretty much and go, whoa, I'm really uncomfortable. That got weird. What are you trying to say? You do have to pull people up, unfortunately, because people will treat you the way you train them to treat you if you let them get away
Exactly.
with it all the time. And it's a bit of a shock to some of us because I don't set out to have relationships like that with people. I've got standards and I'm not going to treat people badly. If I don't like someone, I'll minimize my contact and remain professional. But some
Yeah.
people, a lot of people, are unable to manage themselves that way and they're nasty pieces of work. So you have to react accordingly. Now, rebuilding yourself and having that self authenticity to do that means that, yeah, in some instances, you're going to end up going, well, yeah, goodbye. You got to go because don't come here and stand up for yourself. But if you would like to have button pushing monkeys that just take whatever bullshit you dish out, then you please go and hire one because I'm not one of those.
Yeah. And for me, I know when I was going through that, it was really around value. Like it was looking at my values and then making a
Right.
decision from that going, does this actually align with my values? And I was just going, no, it is so far off from my values. It's
Yeah.
not funny. So
Yep.
when I got walked, I was kind of like going,
Yep.
I'm not surprised. I don't care because
Yep.
I'm not going to try and prove myself over and over again to you of my worth. If you can't see my worth, then there's no point in me actually being here. Um, and and so I started performing less, not in as in the sense that I wasn't doing my job. I wasn't
Yeah.
jumping through the hoops that they wanted me to jump
I'm
through
not
all the
taking
time.
on 20% extra work. And you know what? Here's my toxic trait. When people treat me like that, I don't say anything. Secretly, I fucking despise them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I just
exactly.
think, why am I bothering with you? And all of the bullshit, bullying garbage that they come out with, I sit there going, and in my head, I'm going, you're a dickhead. It's
Yeah,
bouncing off me. I don't care what you think because
yeah,
I've already decided I know what you are. So your words mean nothing. So, and again, that is, there's no workplace I think that's perfect.
No,
There's a
and I'm not saying that, all workplaces are like that, because they're not all like that.
Yep,
And what I find is when you are, in when you have more congruence, see, with yourself, with your inner
yeah,
self, you will
yep,
find then that you do come across workplaces that align with you even more so. And the people who would be the bullying types tend to avoid you because they
yeah.
know they can't get anything out of you.
There's a
It's
new
usually when
yeah,
we're showing some form of insecurity,
vulnerability. Mm,
and that actually that escalates. That's what comes to the
mm,
forefront. And so when you are able to understand what that pattern of behavior is within you,
yes,
and you're able to go, well, okay, this is what's playing out here. I need to let that go. Like for me, as I said, I was tolerating too much. I wasn't
same,
setting the
same.
boundaries in my
Yeah,
workplace. And so then I just went, oh, okay, that is totally out of congruency with who I am as a person and
yep,
what my values are like, because in my personal life, I would not tolerate that. So why am I tolerating it? What the fuck, man?
yeah, yeah.
And,
Yep,
and so then it was a very, very, again, honest conversation with myself about what I needed to do differently.
mm,
And so where I'm going with that is when you truly understand who you are and you are coming from that place of authenticity. And authenticity is not a personality type by any means, okay?
no,
It's a
no.
relationship with your truth.
Yep,
That's what it
yep,
actually is. And that's what I found myself in that situation, is where I came back to my truth and
mhm,
went, right, you need to make some decisions here. And it was funny because even before they walked, I actually was ringing my boss to say, um, I need to be removed from that particular site. And if you do not remove me, I'm resigning.
yeah, exactly.
And
I resigned as well.
he
Yep,
happened to ring me just at the same time that I was about to ring him, and he says, "Oh, by the way, they've said that they don't want you on site." And I went, "Fabulous, because that works both ways. Thank you
bye-bye.
very much. See you later."
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, and that was, and it just worked out because again, I got very clear on the decision. I'm pretty sure that if I didn't get clear on that decision, I would have just kept putting up with it, and then kept
Yeah,
coming home, bawling my eyes out, because that's what was happening.
yeah.
I was so upset,
There's
so
no way to
angry
move.
with
No.
how I was being treated. And even though I was advising the company that I worked for of what was going on, they weren't
Mm,
stepping in to actually support me.
they don't. They try to
And
protect
so
the contract rather than you.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, and that's exactly what happened, and I went, I can't keep doing this. This is not
no.
on." So, again, it came back to being honest with myself and having that really deep, truthful conversation and a better relationship with self in
When you
order
have
to
that
move forward.
relationship, you identify much more quickly. I think when your relationship with yourself is bad, you stay in intimate
Bad
partnerships too
situations.
long, you
Yeah.
stay in friendships too long, you stay in jobs too long because you always say to yourself, "Oh, I might not do any better." I know the friend recently that I said, "Look, I can't I'm sorry, I think things have reached their use by date. I wish you all the very best, but I'm and all blessings to you. But I think we both just need to let things go and move on." She
Yeah.
actually said to me, you need to be really careful because if you get rid of lots of friends, you're going to end up very lonely. And I was like, "No, I won't." I didn't say
Because
it
'Cause
to
I'll
her.
meet new friends.
No, it won't happen. I'm perfectly fine with that. And it was funny because we'd only had a conversation about 2 weeks earlier where she'd told me how terribly lonely she was. And she's got
Oh,
lots more
wow.
friends than I do, lots more friends than I do. So I think it's really important that don't let people that like the old me would have gone, "Oh, no, no, no." The new me that's done the authentic work went, "Yeah, I see your jab and I refute it because I can tell inside myself I'm no longer concerned about that." The old me would have been, but I'm no longer concerned about that because I thought, "Oh, that just shows where you're coming from there. Okay, good decision.
Mm.
All the best and fare thee well." But yeah, and it's just, I guess it comes back to that authentic, I'm okay, I'm going to be all right. The security, my safety is in here. I feel
Mm.
safe within myself. That's something that a lot of people can't say. They can't say that they feel safe inside themselves. And if you can get to the point where you're safe enough inside yourself to know I'm capable. I've dealt with bad shit before. Life always changes. That is a given. And if you think it isn't, then you really need to look at that. The only way to manage to keep up with life's changes is to have the compass in here. That's
Yeah.
the only thing. All the other external stuff, your relationships, your homes, your properties, your cars, all of that is in a state of constant atrophy. This is the stuff that you grow. you know?
Absolutely. And
Mm.
that self-relationship, that's the key. It's, as I said, it's the foundation to absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And over this series, we're actually going to really explore more around self-awareness, limiting beliefs, all the self-sabotage stuff, our
Yeah.
values, our purpose. Gosh, there's so much confidence, mindfulness,
Oh my
there's a
God.
whole heap of things that
I
we're
love
going
the
to actually cover.
self-sabotage stuff. The
Oh,
self-sabotage stuff was just unbelievable. When you unpack that shit and then people start using those manipulative techniques or whatever on you, you go, oh, yeah, I see what you're doing. So good.
it's
Woo!
excellent. So, and we're going to go through, this is episode 1 of 12. We're actually going to cover quite a few different topics,
Mm,
but this is the foundational one, the
yeah.
self-relationship, that authentic self. And
Why you
it's
do it.
the
Why you
absolute,
do it. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm,
All the other things that we're going to be talking about are basically outcomes of when you don't have a good relationship with self and what happens. So,
absolutely.
when we talk about the lack of confidence or purpose or things like that. But when you do actually have a good relationship with yourself, what does that look like as well? What does the confidence look like?
Yeah.
How does mindfulness work in your life, when you're actually got a good
How
relationship
do
with
you move
yourself?
through life differently? Your posture
Yeah,
changes, your delivery changes, you feel you're capable of sitting. I'm capable now of sitting there when someone is a bit rude and counting to 3, giving it 3 beats in my head and not breaking eye contact and going, "Hmm, not sure what you meant by that. Would you like to reframe it?" I would not have done that previously because I'd be thinking, "Oh shit, I've just got to hang on to this crappy job."
yeah,
So
exactly.
those are
So
little things.
your intention changes,
Little
that's the
tiny
thing.
changes that are
Yeah,
all within you that are
yep,
really, really powerful. And they will break the patterns of issues and behaviors that you're having in all areas of your life. Because that's the key. You don't just want to work on your fitness or your mental health or your relationship with your partner. All these different areas, yes, they're all important to work on. But doing this does them all. That's
exactly.
the key.
Because all of those things are expressions of the self relationship. That's what they
Exactly.
actually are. They're
Exactly.
expressions of that. And I think that's absolute key. So, signs that your self relationship actually may need attention, and we've covered quite a bit already, but they can include things like second guessing yourself quite a
Hmm.
lot as well, not following through.
Yep.
And when you second guess yourself a lot, what you end up telling yourself is you don't trust yourself. That's what happens there. And it also means that you lack the confidence in yourself to actually follow through with decisions. You've
Yeah.
got to go
Yeah.
to other people to ask for advice all the time
Yep.
because you're not going within. And having feelings of guilt for having needs, like I have needs. Oh my gosh, I feel guilty for having needs. Like it should be everybody else and not me. Things
Yep.
like that. Gosh, getting exhausted from being around people as well.
You do because you just when you're around people, it's not the exhaustion from being around people, it's the exhaustion from putting yourself last when you're around other
Yeah,
people.
being everything to everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And the struggle to make decisions, as we said, without outside validation. That's the other thing, disconnected from what you actually want in
You
life.
just don't know what you want. Haven't got a clue.
Yeah,
Like I went through a stage of that going, yeah, I don't know. And I still don't 100% know with absolute clarity all of the things that I want to do with my life. But it shifts. You go from going, right, I'm just going to go and do this degree. I'm going to go and do this career and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to have this car and this house. No, I'm going to go after things that make me feel like this.
yeah, yes, exactly, exactly. And I think that's what happens when a lot of us are successful on paper, isn't it? But we just don't feel fulfilled
No.
in the other areas of our life because we're not looking at, well, how does this actually make me feel? Besides the ego going, oh, I feel really important.
Yeah.
It's the,
Yeah.
how is your heart singing,
Yes. Yes.
Um, are
I
you
went after
excited?
a job where I helped coach people and do something that looks really good or it makes me feel great, or I coach people or whatever, I lift people up or I support people, whatever that looks like, that's what makes me feel good, not I'm going to go and become a manager because it pays good money and, it's a stable role and I'll have a car.
Exactly. And I think these are all signs. They're not proof that something's wrong with you, but they're just signs that you don't have a great relationship with self when all of those things are kind of out of sync.
It's the
And
norm.
you don't have to have every single one of them. It could be one
No.
or two things. Like you actually, as I said, you may just keep repeating the same patterns. It could be you may just feel that your relationship with your, the relationships you have in your life need to change, and
Yep.
the other areas of your life are doing really well. Or it could be that you have a really bad relationship with your body.
Yep.
So, these, again, they're all just signs that the relationship with self is actually missing,
Yeah, and
and it really is
it's
about
just a
coming back to that.
question of coming back to you.
Mm.
Exactly, and you're not broken, and you are honestly normal, because most people have never really done this kind of work. It's rare that people have gone through this process, or that we're taught to, like you say, go after the materialistic things, and this is kind of a spiritual as well as a mental journey that
Mm.
and this is the key to burnout too. I think burnout is a massive issue in Western society, and the reason that you've got burnout is because the relationship with yourself isn't good. You're not listening to that inner voice that's telling you, or you are, you can hear it, and you feel powerless to do anything about it.
Absolutely. I think a really good reflection question that you could probably ask yourself is, if my outer life is a reflection of my inner relationship, what is my life currently showing me? What's showing up in my life?
And there's a lot of good things, and there can also be a lot of bad things. It doesn't necessarily mean everything's black and white. Like, identify the
No,
things. There are good things that shows the areas that you're doing well with yourself, and then the areas that you're not doing so well with yourself. And it's perfect. It's like a self-designed roadmap.
it is. And that roadmap, in our case, is the Authentic Life Blueprint. So
Yep.
we begin the process in a really structured, honest way. And we're not trying to fix you, as we've said before. It's really about guiding you to understand the beliefs, the patterns, the values, and the choices, etc., of yourself, so that in a relationship you can start to change and start shaping the life that you actually want.
Yep.
So if this episode has actually spoken to something within you, the workbook really is the place to begin. And we
Mm.
would absolutely love to hear from you. So please place some comments below just to see what you got out of today's episode. Was there anything that really stood out for you that you had an aha moment with? And we would absolutely love you to subscribe to our channel, because it's a really great way for us to get the message out there and to guide and assist more people to that self relationship. Because your
Absolutely.
authentic life is actually not built on becoming someone else. It's actually begins by building the relationship that you have with yourself.
Yep.
So
100%.
remember to live brilliantly and think beautifully. Until next time, guys. Ciao.
Bye.
We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes, or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family, and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.